Okay. Hi, good morning. So I'll do a brief introduction again. My name is Jumbo Constance, and I'm the Business Development Executive at Ikori International Development Limited. Ikori is an international development organization offering innovative solutions to drive sustainable social and enterprise development. So our vision at Ikori is to contribute to a prosperous world that creates an opportunity for a better life for all, especially the poor and vulnerable, and to facilitate inclusive market growth by developing strategies that promote value chain competitiveness and build resilient communities. So our core values are innovation, collaboration, commitment, and excellence. So we pride ourselves in quality service delivery. So Ikore provides a wide range of services to diverse organizations. So our expertise is in development consulting, research, project design and execution, business advisory, and enterprise development across various sectors, using multiple approaches and covering, using multiple approaches and covering several components. So we facilitate market inclusion for improved productivity and the bumper harvest through capacity building, business model strategy advisory, market linkages, social enterprises, and research. So we have so far leveraged 7 private sector funds from vaccination to mechanization, increased production, increased income, and capacity building. So this is what Ikore has been up to for the past 3 years. So at Ikore, we go the extra mile. We work in hard to reach poor areas across Nigeria and Africa, providing solutions and support inefficient markets and communities. So I'll do a brief intro on what the webinar is going to be about. So agriculture, as we know, has been an important practice from the beginning of human evolution, crop production being an essential brand of agriculture. The agricultural activities and planning for sustainable food yield depend on wet season, which is just one season in a year, from preparation to harvesting, but the irregularity of onset and cessation of the rainy season across many regions over the past few years has made it difficult for farmers to optimize the seed planting period and adjust to the length of growing season, which has led to low crop production. So as a result of the growing effects of climate change, agripreneurs, which are young agripreneurs as well, need to practice sustainable and effective farming methods to bridge this gap that the one farming season has created. And with the growing demand for food as a result of the growing population as well in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. So this has led to the theme of our webinar today, which is farming without season, and what we need to know as youth and agripreneurs and people in agribusiness in Nigeria. So we have 2 speakers, and we have Samson Ogbole. He's the team lead, Soilless Farm Lab. He's going to be speaking on hydroponic techniques for non-seasonal farming. And we have Chinwe Ohoji. She's the CEO Farm Innovation Nigeria Limited, and she'll be speaking on the impact of the sustainable farming system in Nigeria. So before we get started, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the box in your Zoom panel. Yes, I'll bring them up during the Q&A session so we can have a conversation about what we'll talk about throughout the webinar. So now, without further ado, we'll turn time over to our first presenter, which is Chinwe Ohoji. But before we go to Chinwe Ohoji, you can contact Ikori through our Facebook accounts, Instagram account, and also via LinkedIn. You can also check up our website on www.ikori.org. So I will stop sharing my screen now so we can move on to speak to Chinwe. So she can come up and let us know what she has been doing around agribusiness and the impact of sustainable farming. Thank you, Chinwe.
Thank you, Constance. Hello, everyone. Please give me a few seconds to share my screen with you. Hi, Constance, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. I can see your screen. You can go on. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chiwewoji Aruolo. I am the Chief Executive Officer for Farm Innovation Nigeria Limited. Today, I'm going to be talking about making a case for building sustainable agri-businesses in Nigeria. My background is in entrepreneurship and innovation, so I'm going to be treating this issue from that perspective. We already have a technical expert in-house in the person of Mr. Samson Obole, so he's going to shed some more light on the technical aspects. So this will be from a business point of view. So let me give you a little bit of background into what we do here at Farm Innovation Nigeria Limited. We're an agtech company, and we literally work with smallholder farmers in Nigeria. We do this by leveraging basic technologies like mobile and web technologies to deliver innovative areas. So we provide information on good agricultural practices, climate smart, information to farmers to help them make better planting decisions. We also work with market actors as well, ensuring that they're being linked to farmers who have produce ready for offtake. So we do all this leveraging ICT. We have a couple of products. One is Farm Aid, which is a digitized extension solution, which provides information to smallholder farmers, market actors, aggregators. We provide commodity pricing information via this application. We also have VetWiz, which is a mobile application designed to help community animal health workers and paravets rapidly diagnose animal diseases in areas where farmers are unable, or livestock owners are unable to access veterinary service. So we're currently present in about 10 states in Nigeria, mostly the north, but we plan to expand to other places in the country. We work in the rice, maize, groundnut, tomato, soybeans, sorghum, and sesame value chains at the moment. So without much further ado, I'm going to dive into the business of the day, which is understanding agribusiness. So we're going to do this by breaking the concepts that we'll be discussing today. So we'll be talking about what agribusiness is and then what sustainability is. Okay. So what is agribusiness? I mean, some of you might have heard this, and some persons might think that agribusiness is only relegated to farming. So, but it's not just, the hoe and cutlass approach. It's everything it's the entirety of commercial operations that are related to farming. So everything from mechanization, seed production, breeding, marketing and distribution, agricultural advisory services. So all of these services are captured in the agribusiness ecosystem map. You would also see that ICT sits at the parameter of this ecosystem, and this is because it's a tool for scale up. So whatever service you're already doing in the agribusiness ecosystem, ICT is a useful tool for scaling up that business. So why invest in agribusiness? I mean, why is it important? Why not oil? Why not construction? Why not real estate? So I had to dig into some facts. These are all global, facts in the agricultural sector. And one of such is from the United Nations, where they projected that the world population is estimated to reach 9.8 billion in 2050 and 11.2 billion in 2100. And this is from 7.6 billion in in 2020. So to put this in perspective, they are saying that, okay, my math is a bit rusty, but to put this in perspective, this would be a 35% increase by 2050 of the world's current population. So this means by 2050, we're going to have a lot of mouths to feed. Okay, so this is why it's important that we invest in agribusiness. Second point is now coming back home to Africa. Africa continues to experience high rates of population growth, and between 2017 and 2050, experts project that the population of 26 African countries are projected to expand to at least double their current size. To put it again in perspective, Nigeria is a nation of about 200 million people, and they are saying that by 2050, we're looking to get to 400 million people. That's a lot. And yet again, another reason to invest in agriculture. Investments in agriculture will have a positive effect on domestic food supply to urban areas that can reduce dependence on food prices. So with us importing a lot of the food that we consume, things like the foreign exchange can affect the price of these items. And what this means is that for every time the exchange rate goes up, food becomes even more expensive. But if we invest in agriculture, we will be able to provide more domestic, generate more domestic food supply to the urban areas. And what this will do is reduce that dependence on food import, thereby also crashing the price of food in the market because we now have a surplus. The fourth point is the fact that economic development in terms of jobs and access to markets will record an exponential increase if we invest in agriculture, because okay, so let me put this in perspective. The more we spend, the more revenue businesses pay, the more revenue businesses generate for the government in terms of tax. And what do we do with tax? We plow that back into the development of social infrastructure. So when we have a sector like the agricultural sector that is a very big employer of labor, creating more jobs and access to markets, this will in turn have a positive impact on social infrastructure in the country. The sector, which is a $5 trillion industry, which represents 10% of global consumer spending. Let me give you an example. For every 100 naira you spend, 10% of it goes to food. It's as simple as that. 10% of every 100 naira goes to food. And it creates 40% of global employment opportunities. So it's a huge chunk. I mean, when you think about all the other things that have to compete for your scarce financial resources, 10% is quite a huge chunk of spending. So it means it's an industry that will always thrive. Okay. The last point is that food and agribusiness companies on average have demonstrated higher total returns to shareholders than many other sectors. I put an example there. The total return so this is a year-on-year increase. So you're saying that between 2004 and 2005, there was a 17% increase. Between 2005 and 2006, another 17% increase. So as you can see, it's an industry that would continue to enjoy tremendous growth. So if you're looking for reasons to invest in agribusiness, I think with these few points of mine, I should have been able to convince you to do so. So let's talk about sustainability now. What is sustainability? Simple definition. It rests on the principle that we must meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In layman's terms, in eating today, do not forget that your children and your children's children and their children to come will also need to feed. So we need to keep that in mind as we decide on whatever agribusiness venture or opportunities we are pursuing. So why sustainable agriculture? So we're marrying the two concepts together now, sustainability and agriculture. Why should we even why should we be talking about this? I've narrowed it down to 4 points. One, resource conservation. As pressure begins to mount on global food systems, our resources are dwindling. It therefore becomes impractical to rely on intuition and traditional practices to feed the globe. Currently in Nigeria, we have more rainy season farming than dry season farming, for example. We cannot continue this way because the population is increasing. We need to be able to farm all year round, okay? So we now begin to look at ways to maximize the current resources that we have to ensure greater output. Okay, so that's the first point. So the second point is smarter farming. The adoption of sustainable practices will spur innovation in the sector. Why do we need innovation in the sector? We need innovation because innovation bets competition. And when we have businesses competing for the limited attention of the customers, the savings on time and resources is passed down to the customer. This means if we have more companies competing, they would be looking at ways to save time, ways to save cost. They would be pushing more affordable products and commodities to us. So at the end of the day, the user or the customer is the greatest beneficiary at the end of the day. Waste reduction and elimination. That's the third point. People begin to pay more attention to words like regeneration, reuse, repurpose, and the savings yet again is passed on to the end user. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're renovating a building and you decide, okay, these plastic plumbing pipes are worn out. I don't need them anymore. And usually you would discard things like that. But somebody thinking about sustainable agriculture is saying, oh, this can actually be useful for setting up a planting medium in my backyard. They can use that to cultivate vegetables in their backyard. So what sustainable agriculture is doing or is helping people do is pay more attention to things that can be repurposed, can be reused, can be regenerated. The idea is just to maximize the value gotten from whatever resources. And I just wanted to add that some people usually I mean, yes, the population is increasing, but land is always a constant. But the truth of the issue is that land will not always, in fact, land is not a constant because land is, when you look at the activities of real estate developers, they're competing for, space with farmers who need, this land to farm. So yes, yet another reason why we should be looking at other ways of, of producing the food that the growing population will need to feed on. My last point is job and wealth creation. Sustainable agriculture has bettered urban agriculture. It's an output of urban agriculture is an output of sustainable agriculture because it's an aspect of agriculture that tends to be attractive to Nigerians' young population. I mean, if they tell a lot of young people like me to take hoe and cutlass and shovel to go to the farm, I'll be looking at you like, are you okay? But with sustainable agriculture, we're seeing more innovative ways of bringing farming to urban areas, making it more attractive for young people. And with that, we're creating job opportunities for these young people, which in turn leads to, okay? So let's go back to the next slide. So here's a quote from Goldsmith, 1978. He says that the economic interactions of farmers are partly reflected in their purchases of goods and services within their communities. The key word here is within the communities. So with more farmers, taking up sustainable practices in agriculture, they are able to increase their yields, which translates to increase in income for them. Okay, which also translates to increased revenue in the form of taxes for their immediate local governments or their communities, which in turn spills into the development and improvement of existing social infrastructure. So that's the connection there. Move over to the next slide now. So now that we know all this, let's look at steps to set up your agribusiness. Just give me a few minutes to adjust the screen. So the first thing you want to do is, okay, now that you understand what it means to set up a sustainable agribusiness, you don't just jump into it, without knowing, without taking some key steps. And the very first step is identifying a problem. So what problem are you trying to solve? Are you trying to solve the problem of post-harvest losses? For example, on the tomato value chain, farmers lose as much as 40% of their produce in transporting tomatoes from the rural areas to the urban areas. So if that's a problem that you're trying to solve, by looking at more sustainable practices, you want to do a lot of research. You want to embark on a lot of research, find out what the factors that are driving these activities, or what is the factors driving decision making by the farmers. Would you focus on cold storage facilities for farmers in urban areas so that they can also store the produce in the dry season as well? Or do you want to look at transportation, for example? Once you've done that, you want to understand the key trends in your sector. What are the factors that are influencing decision making in your sector? Are more people using tomato products, for example, in cosmetic products? So these are all the things that will help you make a plan, set a goal, and then you also want to test your idea. It's not just jumping into it with your eyes, we both fit in. You want to test in small, pilot your idea, learn as much as possible, iterate when necessary, and only then will you be able to seek further investments and then scale your idea. So are there challenges associated with setting up sustainable agribusiness? Of course there are. And one of those challenges is the lack of access to information on markets, technology, commodity exports, and all that. The second challenge is poor social infrastructure. So things like bad roads, electricity supply will affect any agribusiness, because we're talking about storage, mediums. Then we're also looking at the time they take to transport this produce from the rural areas to the urban areas, and with the bad roads, of course, that's a negative impact. Culture and unwillingness to innovate is also a challenge. If people decide, okay, we only want to be farming during dry season, during the rainy season when there's water, there's an abundance of water, it's not going to help us. The willingness to look at new ways of doing things is also a challenge if you're setting up an agribusiness. So this is something you also have to deal with. And of course, there are limited financing opportunities for agribusinesses. And then you talk about the unskilled and underskilled workforce. You need a skilled team to be able to set up something productive, something sustainable. Okay. So this is my next slide. Although we've looked at challenges, are there key strategies for success? Yes, they are. One of those is to be open to partnerships. There are already existing businesses that you can partner with to get your vision out there. You also need to keep listening to your end user, your target customer. What are they saying about the produce? What are they saying about the efficiency with which you're able to get the produce from the farm to their table? You have to continue learning about your industry and other industries that might affect your industry. For example, if in the automobile industry, for example, if they say, okay, we want to start using shea butter as fuel for vehicles, anybody investing in shea butter is already a billionaire overnight. So this is how an external industry affects your own industry. Never stop educating your users and customers. Those of us in the sustainable agricultural business, we have a lot of homework to do in getting people to see the value in sustainable agriculture. You want to also stay on top of policies internally and externally. Another example, if a country like the Netherlands should ban the importation of palm oil because it has a negative effect on the environment, it will also affect your business negatively if that was your primary export market. So you want to stay on top of policies like that. And then you want to give your team the freedom to make mistakes, and then because that is the only way innovation can thrive. And then finally, you need to invest in yourself. So that's all from my end. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be waiting for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chinwe. That was an amazing presentation, and I believe we've all learned a lot. So just to throw a bit more light on what you spoke about, I think the major one is the rising food price in Nigeria. I think this morning I read on the news that there's a 15% increase every month. So sustainable farming is something we really need to look into and see how we can maximize the resources we have available to be able to bridge this gap and provide food for everyone. So I would move over to my next speaker, Samson Obole. So he would throw more light on a technique that has been growing in the system. And I really, really want you guys to listen and be able to learn and know what's going on in that system. Samson Obole, please. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you. Constance, a pleasure to be here. Looking at aquaculture, or what most people refer to as soilless farming, aquaculture. So I will start with a very obvious question. Don't we have enough land in Nigeria? Why should we go back into grow? Why should we diversify into growing plants without soil, considering we have so much land? And yes, the reality is, even from what the earlier speaker talked about, as a nation, we have enough land as a nation. Unfortunately, having land is not the same thing as having arable land. Arable lands are lands that are able to actually allow something to grow on them. And number two, minus having arable land, there is a third factor which we refer to as fertile land. Now, not all arable lands are fertile for growing. As of 1979, there was a work carried out by Professor Agbola from University of Ilorin, where he realized that less than 40% of Nigeria lands were fertile enough for growing. A fertile land is a land that you can grow without the use of fertilizers, manure, or the likes. And you would agree with me that for most local farmers, anytime they are planning their planting budget, one of the first things that they always have to bring on board is fertilizers, manure, nutrients, or whatever. That shows that their lands as it is not fertile enough. So that is issue number one. Number two, like also previously stated, there is also the seasonality in food production. And one of the major issues with seasonality in food production is the unstable food prices. That is why we always have the fluctuating food prices all year round. Then number three is you realize that every time civilization comes into a place, one of the first victims of civilization is agriculture, because they are pushed further and further away from the city. And the issue with that is the younger generation who we want to pick up farming want to move to the cities. And if our farms are not good enough to stay in the cities, it means there is no way to get the younger generation to be interested in farming. Add to that the reality that the fact that our roads are not so good. So it means that the further it is away the farms are from the market, the more we will spend on transportation, the more you spend on storage and all of that. But if the farms can be closer to the city, you save costs on all of these fronts. Then of course, there is the issue of desertification in the north, coastal erosion and coastal encroachment in the south. We have oil spillage in the south region. We have bush burning, deforestation, all of these things increasing the impact of climate change, that even the regular farmer has no idea when the right planting season is, when the rain would come, when the sun would shine, how long it would stay, and all of that. And of course, there is the issue of agrochemical abuse. And this is very, very common today. You realize that as a soil-based farmer, the question is, how many soil-based farmers had anything like soil analysis before they picked the kind of fertilizer they are going to use? Because your fertilizer is supposed to be a treatment based on the problem that you have seen on the soil from testing. But if there was no testing done, it means that the fertilizer that you are applying can actually be the problem of the farm without you knowing, because you just feel, oh, it's NPK, but you forget that these NPK have numbers written to them, which means the assumption is if I am buying NPK 20-20-20, it is because I have done a test that shows me that what I need is 20-20-20 or 20-10-10 and so on and so forth. So you realize that if there is no previous test done, then there is obviously what we call fertilizer abuse, because whatever fertilizer you apply that the plant does not take up has one of two fates. Either the water with rain will fall and push it away, or it goes so deep into the ground and contaminates the soil water. So back to our discussion, soilless farming. So I just wanted to give like few reasons why we do soilless farming. And of course, there is the obvious one of youth are interested in this thing and it is not seasonal. Now, what then is soilless farming? Now, before I describe what soilless farming is, let me explain, because the question is, how is it possible to grow plants without the use of soil? I mean, it sounds absurd. Now, for us to understand that, I will use a thing we are all used to, which is cooking. Now, in the past, we grew up with our grandparents, great-grandparents cooking with firewood. But somebody understood that for food to get cooked, it did not necessarily need fire. What it needed was heat. And as long as heat was provided, the food will get cooked. Now, which means we could move from fire to electric cooker to kerosene cooker to electric stove, whatever kind of material it is we are using for cooking, as long as it could provide heat, the food will get cooked. Now, same way, it is important we understand what is the function of soil to the system. Now, soil has three basic functions in the whole planting economy. The first function of soil is to anchor the roots of the plant, that is, hold the roots of the plant in place, hold it firm. The second function of soil, so I'll try and go around so that you can see what I'm talking about until I'm done with my class. The second function of soil is for water retention. Now, when we say water retention refers to ability of the soil to hold water. And the third function of soil is for aeration, to allow air to pass. To see the validity of these, you realize that when we were in primary school, we were taught that there are three types of soil. We were told that there is the loamy soil, the sandy soil, and the clay soil. Now you realize that we do not use clay soil for growing, because although clay soil can give a perfect anchorage, the issue is, and hold plenty water, it will not allow air to pass. In the case of sandy soil, it cannot give good anchorage, it cannot hold water, though it would allow proper air to pass. But loamy soil can perform these three characteristics, hence we use it to grow. So when it comes to soilless farming, what we are simply dealing with is using materials that can perform these three functions, but yet it is not soil. So an example of such material, for example, here we have carrots growing. And in here, what I have is the shaft of rice. This is coconut coir, that's the shaft of coconut. Let me look for the one that we have not grinded smooth that explains it well. So I'm looking, so this is the chip that's from coconut. So this is the shaft of coconut and the shaft of rice joined together that we are using to grow. The shaft of coconut and shaft of rice that we are using to grow. And this system is something that anybody can set up. So for example, in here, what I use to setting this up, this is the normal tarpaulin. The tarpaulin that we use for our canopies, that is what we used here. So this is normal tarpaulin that is black and white. We used iron rod to try and make it look like a square. And in here, I have sweet potato growing. I have basil growing that we've harvested from. I am using it to multiply my pineapple suckers. I have mint growing. I have stevia. On this same small system, I have cucumber. I have kale, coily kale, black kale. I have beets. I have Mexico love plant. I think I have some cabbages, some purple cabbage coming out somewhere, all on a small system. Here I have what we call a vertical system. So vertical because 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So in here I have 8 layers of plants growing. And with this is the equivalent of having 8 of these structures, because I am taking advantage of the vertical space. Here I am using things like buckets to grow, because the idea is to show that anybody can do this. I don't know how many more minutes I have, but the idea is to show that anybody can do this. Then the next question would be, how then do we bring in our nutrient considering? So here we have pepper. We want to put, we just planted our habanero peppers. So you see these are habanero peppers. So how do we get our nutrients to the system? So you see our irrigation lines. Now inside our nutrient tank, that is where we mix all our nutrients. So whatever nutrients we want to supply to the plant, we put them inside our tank, and these nutrients must first and foremost be soluble in water so that they can enter into the tank. Then we are able to supply into our system using our drip tips through, basically our drip tips. So here we have different vegetables. Again, this is coily kale and black kale. Then these are purple cabbages. What most people are used to is the green cabbages. So I just want us to see that the systems can be in different forms. Again, everything used here, let me come close. I think this is, so you can see we are using.
Hello, Samson. We're unable to connect with you. We're unable to hear you. Hello, Samson. Okay, I think we just lost Samson. I guess he will be back. Okay, yes, he's coming back. Just give him a few. Okay, he's back.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know my network disappeared for a bit. My apologies. So usually the essence of those green and white, the yellow and blue stickers is because when insect comes in, insects are interested in bright colors. So rather than going to attack plants, when they see those fields, they run to them, not knowing that they are sticky trap insects. And once it is filled up, we take it out and bring in new set. So here again, you can see another kind of system. So the idea is anybody can do this. These are lettuces. Here we have romaine lettuce. We have different types of lettuce in here. For plumbers, those of us that have plumbers or know anything about plumbing, you will know that these things are called water gutters for collecting water. Now, if you are into poultry, you call these things feeding trough, but we are calling them grow trough because we are able to use them to grow our plants. And here we are doing about 4 layers. So we have the 2 bottom layers, the 2 central middle layers, and 2 at the top. So here we have lettuce, different types of lettuce. This is the Lula Rosa lettuce. And in this middle space, we decided to throw in cucumbers. So here we have cucumbers all through, and we put a twine. And these are things that anybody can do. This is regular iron that a regular welder can help you design. So I'm just trying to run through. Now, the most important thing about the kind of nutrients that we use is that the nutrient must be soluble in water. Now, the kind of materials that we use, that is your rice hull, so you can see our tanks where the nutrient comes from. So the kind of materials that we use, our rice hull, our cocoa coir, vermiculite, perlite, whatever material we are using to replace soil is such that, number one, it must contain no nutrients. And the reason why we want to ensure that it contains no nutrients is because we want to be able to account for everything we are giving to the plants. We want to ensure that it is what we supply that the plant is getting. Sorry, please, I need to open the tomatoes. Modupe! Sorry, I want us to see the tomatoes. Screen house is locked. Good morning. I wanted us to see the tomatoes is locked. So now what are the kind of plants that we can grow on the system? We can grow any kind of plant theoretically, but economically, not every plant will make sense on soilless system because we have to look at the economy of how much did I spend to set up the system and how much is what I am going to get from this system. So because of that, yes, for vegetables, for cereals, they are perfect, but for things like tree crops, it's a no-no. So here is a tomato farm. So these is tomatoes. So this is a tomato farm. The next is, what is the advantage of, what are some of the advantages of soilless that are probably not mentioned? It is easier to manage. They are easier to manage compared to planting in soil because with this, you don't have to worry about weeding. So you notice that where we put our plants, we put a mulching film on the ground, then you can see that this is still not soil. Then this is how their nutrients get here through our emitter. So this is where the nutrients will come out from to go to each plant. So this way we are sure that, oh, every plant is getting what they want. So you see that they are just flowering and fruiting, just flowering and fruiting. So I think my time is done. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Samson, for this. This is amazing work that you're doing out there. And with this system in place, like I'm sure that we are going to cover the issues of products, agricultural yield, and one seasonal farming. So this is the reason for this webinar, to throw more light into things like this and let the youth and the public know that there are several opportunities out there. So this is the first of many. This is just to show how the agroponic system works. So this is just one, but we're going to go through some questions before our time runs out. So I think I have a question from Ahmed, but I think this is for Samson directly. So is there a way for the public to find information on how the system of farming works? Is there a way to reach out to you for more information? So Samson, this is for you. I think people want to learn more and know how the system works and how they can start. So is there a way people can reach out to you and get more information or something? You can speak on this.
Okay, yes. I think since September or so last year, I have every month except 1 month in September last year, I've been organizing free trainings for anyone that wants to learn how to grow without soil. You come, you spend 1 week on the farm, it's free. You just pay for your own accommodation. We teach you for free how to set up the same thing then. We try to also teach using the ABCD method, asset-based community development, which is your ability to go back and use locally available materials around you to set up your own farm, as opposed to trying to import or buy things from our own location to wherever location you are coming from. So yeah. Then of course we have materials online. I think I have some articles we published online that also explains some of the basics. But the reason why we tell people to come to the farm is agriculture is a practical venture, or farming rather is a practical venture. So I feel it's always best it is hands-on than just teaching people theories online.
Thank you very much. I have a comment from someone. I pray that you send the recorded presentation to us. So because the recording would be large, if you need the recording, you can drop your email on the comment section so we can send the recordings to you directly. I don't know if you got me. That's from Femi. So I have another question here from Chukunonso. It says, what are the barriers preventing dry season farming and what can we do to improve that in Nigeria? So I think I would move that question to Chinwe. She spoke more about sustainable farming, sustainable agriculture in Nigeria as a whole and its effects and impact. So maybe she should throw more light on this using the question. Chinwe, can you hear me? Hello, Chinwe.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. So, so Chukwunoso's question, if you travel to states like Gombe, Damawa, during the dry season, sometime in November, December, January, you would see how hard the soil is, to farm. Nothing can come out of it because it's hard. And for states like this, or for states like that, the rainy season is usually short. It has a very short time frame. So people try to, squeeze whatever production they can out of that, period. And because we're not in this part of the world, we don't practice a lot of water conservation. So during the dry season farming, if farmers do not have access to irrigation technology where they can channel water from distant locations down to their farms, then it just becomes impossible for them to farm things like rice, all those other crops that grow and vegetables that do very well during the rainy season.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. So I have another question here from someone. He said, do you face similar issues as regards farming the crops you have planted, e.g. pests, low yield, seasons? Do you have in and out of season production? I think this question is for Samson. Hello, Samson.
I was not hearing you before. I can hear you now.
Okay, so I'm going to go again. So someone asked, do you face similar issues as regards farming the crops you have planted, e.g. like pests, low yields, seasons? Do you have in and out of season production?
Okay, so thank you. Number one of the advantages of soilless farming is that you don't have to worry about seasons. So rainy season, dry season, doesn't matter, or no season, it doesn't matter. Every season is planting season and every season is harvest season. Then when it comes to pests and all of that, for pests, one of the major reasons why pests are able to affect plants is usually the quality of the substrate. You don't say substrate, it can be soil or soil. When a Nigerian reduces drastically, that is because there are parasite that has gotten in to come out. Now, same thing happens within the greenhouse. First, with the substrate, because the substrate is healthy, the rate at which pests and all of that can attack the plant is lower. Then two, with the use of greenhouse or net house, it is easier to ensure that you manage some of these things so that before they come in, the greenhouse, net house, or greenhouse is able to act as a buffer to ensure that nothing affects. Then I can't remember the third part. I know they were a three-part question. Then low yield. Okay, yeah, low yield. Now for the yield issue, no, it is not an issue because we understand that one of the importance of soilless farming is you are able to optimize the yield. Because one of the major reasons for low yield in traditional farming is bad agricultural practice as opposed to good agricultural practice. And one of the major things when it comes to good agricultural practice is your weeding, weed management, and all of that. But in soilless where you do not have to deal with weed, where there is no competition for food and all of that, achieving optimum yield is always almost guaranteed.
Okay, thank you very much, Samson, for that. So I have another question here from Chibikwe, and it goes to Chinwe. So how can one constantly seek for the market out there apart from local retail markets? So I'm going to repeat that question for Chinwe. How can one constantly seek for the market out there apart from the local market? Sorry, the local retail market.
Can you please repeat that question again? The network was bad, I didn't get it.
Okay, so I'm going to go again. This question is to Chinwe. How can one constantly seek for the market out there apart from the local retail market?
Okay, the person is asking how they can access more markets apart from local retail markets. Is that correct?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Oh, I mean, there are an abundance of options. So one is the activities of aggregators. You have aggregators, you have that usually work for off-takers. So they go from, if you're a farmer, one of the ways you can get your product to a larger market is to identify an aggregator in your community who buys for a bigger company, okay? So that's one. The second one is to join farmer groups, farmer cooperatives, associations. They usually have an off-taker agreement, okay, with one or two of the major off-takers in Nigeria. So if you're associated with a cooperative, a farmer, a farm association somewhere in your local government area, that's one way of accessing accessing other markets. The third option is to look at get some training in exportation, so commodity export. You want to get some training, look for experts in that field, because for you to be able to export some export commodities in Nigeria, you have to have certain your commodities have to have certain certifications, they have to be of a certain quality. So you want to find out what that sort of information, packaging information, drying information, those sort of things before you're able to export, to international markets. So you can also get training for that.
All right, thank you very much for that. Thompson, I think you need to mute the mic.
Is it the crash landing?
Hello, Samson.
This is the crash landing.
Okay, so I have another question here, and this question goes to the first presenter. This is speaking to Chinwe. You talked about piloting an idea. How about if you are sure that the idea works, especially when you have case studies from others who have tested and seen it work? Shouldn't you move on with establishment in scale? This question goes to Chinwe, please.
Okay, so you have some of us have done, I don't know how many people here are graduates, so you may have written a project one time or the other, and you have a project topic, and it's similar to a project topic that has been treated in like 10 different countries. But when you look at the results of your research, you find out that the outcomes differ. And this is because there are factors, there are environmental, political, so there's a model called the pestle analysis. So a lot of people do that, a lot of business people do that before they go into business. So you're looking at the political, environmental, social, technological, legal, and also the economic factors that would affect the outcome of that business idea that you're looking to pursue or to invest in. So it's not saying, okay, because it was feasible in this particular location, it's going to be feasible in my location. No, one element alone, a political factor, can change the entire outcome of that business that you're looking to pursue. So that's why it's advisable that whatever it is you're going into, if you're going into agribusiness, you want to pilot it with a few piloting on a small scale, and then when you're sure that you have gotten your learnings, you have iterated several times based on the information that you've gotten from your end users, then you can now seek further investments to scale.
Okay, thank you very much, Chinwe. So I have another question here, and the question is for Samson. So my question is, how do you regulate the growth points? For example, the tomatoes you just showed appears to be so small. To be careful, it doesn't interfere with flowering. How then do you regulate the plant's growth? So this question is for Samson.
So normally for tomatoes, notice that they are just starting, that's their fruiting stage, they are not yet ripe. So they are still growing. And what we have is a semi-determinate tomatoes. So on their own, they are going to keep fruiting. It's not like one after the other. If it were determinate tomatoes, that is which is what most people are used to. That is when everything will fruit at once and flower, or be flower at once, fruit, and the plant would die. But for semi-determinate and indeterminate, it's a continuous process. So as they are flowering, the only thing you need to do, like in regular planting, once they begin to flower, you change their nutrient composition. You reduce the nitrogen, because with high nitrogen, what you are telling the plant is produce leaves. For once you reduce the nitrogen and increase your phosphorus and fruiting.
Okay, thank you very much, Samson. So I have another question for Chinwe. I'm running out of time, so I'll try to be as quick as I can. So on sustainable farming, how do you compare the cost of farming with and without mechanization as regards to profit, assuming I still have the same portion of land or coverage? So I'll take that again. On sustainable farming, how do you compare the cost of farming with and without mechanization as regards to profit, assuming I still have the same portion of land or coverage?
Okay, so I'm not the technical expert on this, but I will tell you that there are several models for measuring profitability. And at the end of the day, it also depends on what exactly you want to do. So are you comparing apples to apples? Are you comparing farming are you comparing soilless farming of tomato to farming tomatoes on soil, for example? So it depends on what exactly you're comparing. And I know that there are several models available online to correctly measure this.
All right, thank you very much. I have another question for Samson here. So it says, how do one tackle the issue of hydroponics nutrients needed for soilless farming, considering this everyday inflation in Nigeria? So I'll take the question again. How do one tackle the issue of hydroponics nutrients needed for soilless farming, considering the everyday inflation in Nigeria?
So for right now, the nutrient is readily available in Nigeria. And how do you tackle because of inflation? Well, like the person rightly said, there is inflation and you are not immune to whatever inflation that is happening. So the only thing you can do is buy in bulk and keep, or number two, which I always tell people, is partner with your input supplier so that you have an agreement to actually have a kind of a steady price and a buffer to some extent, and if possible, have a period of payback when you are done with your production, as opposed to trying to pay for everything at the beginning. That would help. But for inflation, you really have no role you can play in that, because every fertilizer, every other input is going up. So hydroponics nutrient cannot be different.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have another question here from Jonathan, and he says this is not related to the webinar topic in any way, but I am a smallholder livestock farmer in the Northeast, and one problem we're having is access to veterinary services, and what can you suggest as a possible solution? So I will just throw in a little bit light on this. I think Ikori is working on a project in the Northeast, and the pilot state in Plateau is an EU-funded project, the latest project. So one of the issues that we're trying to tackle is the community animal health workers program. But so we don't divert into something else, there's a webinar coming up next week that's going to throw more light on livestock and livestock in the Northeast. So we can tackle we can tackle that issue on livestock, on leadership projects and all of that. So we can log on to the webinar coming up this week as well. So I have another question from Adeolu. What is the average cost of setting up a commercially viable soilless farm, e.g. for tomatoes? So I think this question goes to Samson as well. So I'll take that question again. What is the average cost of setting up a commercially viable soilless farm, e.g. for tomatoes?
Thank you. So I'm not commercially viable because
Hello, Samson. We didn't get that. Hello, Samson. We are unable to hear you.
It was sent via email.
I think his audio is having some issues, but we'll take that question again when he comes back. So there's another question here as well, but I think this is for Samson as well. When is the next batch of your free training Also, how can I have access to such opportunity and your location, please? So when he comes back, he will give information on how to reach out to him for the free training and his location and when it's possible for you to start the training. But if he's unable to join or come back in, so we would reach out to him so he can send you, Joseph Tijani, his this information. So I will throw this question to him. You can drop your email address on the comment section so he can respond to you directly. So I'm speaking to Joseph Tijani. If Samson is unable to take your question now, you can drop your email address so we can get back to you. Okay, to throw more light, so on the comment section, I have dropped the webinar link to our webinar coming up this week, Friday, that will speak on the Lidiski project. So everything concerning community animal health workers, veterinary services is going to be talked about properly during the webinar on Friday. So you're all invited to that webinar as well. I don't know if Samson is back, so I think we have lost him. But it looks like we've covered all our major questions. Whatever question we have, we'll direct it to our panelists and they can respond to you directly. So I don't know, Chiwe, do you have any other thing that you would like to add?
No, not at the moment. If there are any questions, I'll be happy. I'll share my email address in the comment section and you can send me your questions directly. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. That's great. So thank you, everyone. And we appreciate you being here. So ICORI is organizing a training on effective report writing, and that's coming up on the 27th of July. So you can register for it via our website, which is www.icori.org. So you can also follow us on our social media handles. On Facebook, it's at ICORI INTL. On LinkedIn, it's at ICORI, and on Instagram, it's at ICORI International, which is ICORI INTL. So thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you next time on our next webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Constance, for having me. Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone.